hope
Good
not.
evening and welcome to the January 11th meeting of the Planning Policy Commission. Tonight we're going to do something a little different and not working on vision this evening. We're just talking about safe injection sites for the city. So I think what I'm going to do is, since we don't have anything to approve, we're going to go right to Trish and get her explanation of what's going on in the city.
Okay. Why are we doing this? We get this question a lot. King County has done two things. They did a plan to try to combat the opioid crisis, and one of the ideas in the plan was they should have two pilot safe injection sites, one located in Seattle and one located somewhere else in King County. And they're looking for that place to put the second pilot. Am I getting blinked at? And so that's one of them. And the other one is the opposition to safe injection sites has got an initiative on the ballot for February to prohibit them everywhere in King County. So we have these two things going on, and so our city council decided they wanted to talk about this right away and oppose having them here because we don't have that human services network for those with drug abuse issues. So September, they talked about it. They talked about it again in October of last year and set a 6-month moratorium. Then in November, they had a public hearing, and they actually sent an ordinance, which I gave you the clip that said they felt that we should prohibit safe injection sites in all zoning districts. Human Services Commission went a little further. They actually had a special meeting with an expert, and they talked about the opioid crisis. And after they did their research and more education, they wrote a letter that's in your packet to the mayor and city council, also opposing safe injection sites in the city. So that's sort of the process in a nutshell. So tonight what we're doing is there's proposed code language for Central Issaquah and the rest of the city that defines safe injection sites community, the longer name, and says that they're not allowed in any of the zoning districts. So it's in both Central Issaquah and the entire city. You might wonder, what is a safe injection site? Here's a picture of one in Vancouver, BC, where you can come in. You have to bring in your own drugs. You can't get them there. And you pick up your little safe, your clean needles and your sterile things, and you pick up your little kit, and you go over into your little room, and you do your thing, and there's a nurse here that's making sure that that you don't overdose. And if you need any help, or if you want some counseling, or if you're thinking that maybe you would like to quit, or any or all of the above, there's folks there to help you through that. And they've tried them in Canada. I don't know there's a lot of data out there, but I didn't delve into a lot of it, knowing that it seemed pretty clear where the direction that Issaquah might be going. So I didn't do a lot of research, but that seemed to be enough for tonight, unless you guys had a lot of questions. I didn't get any questions in email, so I figured this was enough. Well, what are our neighbors doing? As of yesterday, I talked to our folks at MRSC, Municipal Research and Services, that we use, and the long list are those cities and jurisdictions that have already prohibited safe injection sites. They got in there right early and they said, no, we don't want to be the pilot. And in the process, like we are just the 3. And at this time, as I said, no one's volunteered to be that second pilot site for King County. Any questions? So I talked around a little bit about this definition. This comes out of, I believe, King County, but also this is the longest one we could find. This was out of Bellevue, and the King County one that seems to have every name that they're called, everything that could happen in one. It seemed to be the biggest net. And we wanted the biggest net legally to be sure that we were protected against anything that even seemed to be like a safe injection site. So that's the definition. And then, as I said, we prohibited them in all zoning districts, Central Issaquah and the rest of the city. Are there any questions on that part? The public hearing is tonight for you to review and ask questions and ponder and listen to the public if they have comments. And then Land and Shore would review it, Council Land and Shore would review it in February. And then our hope is that there'd be council action in March before the moratorium on safe injection sites. Not the other moratorium. This one is over in March, the end of March. Are there questions on the process?
Just to be clear, the council just recommended it. They did not vote on it, right?
It's a great question. It's in the ordinance. The ordinance directs staff to write it this certain way, and that's why I put that in italics in your staff report, because I've never seen that done before. Not that I've seen everything, but to me it was very interesting to have specific language directed in an ordinance that's actually setting a moratorium. But I'm sure it's fine because it went through the city attorney, but so that's why I pulled that out so you all could see that that's why the code came out with the language that it came out with.
No, I was just getting to the point that tonight we're just going to discuss it, get more input from the community, and discuss among ourselves and make a recommendation to go for or against.
To the city council.
We'll go to the council, and they can use that just for more, actually the opportunity for the community outreach is what this
Right.
is.
Right.
Okay. So are there anything that you want to talk about before I open the public comment?
And there was one comment from Althea. She's not feeling well tonight. She asked that instead of leaving it open, the way we've done the code is we leave the blanks open in the permitted land use tables, meaning that they're not permitted. If they don't have a letter of review in them, they're not permitted. She believes we should actually write in that line that they're not permitted. So I would give you that as a suggestion from a fellow commissioner.
So is there a difference? She mentioned not permitted or, what were the two words she used?
I actually wrote it down. Use not permitted instead of prohibited.
Is there a difference? Is there any?
No, it's the table of permitted land uses. They both get you the same thing. I think, well, at least what I took her comment to mean is leaving it empty maybe seem confusing to folks. And so she wanted us to actually write in that column here, instead of leaving it open, which to the planners means it's not permitted because there's no process in any of the boxes that you could be, like these right here are only permitted in these zones up here. Whereas if you don't have any Ps, then you're not permitted in any zone.
I can see where it would.
Right, because this table is a lot longer. I just cut and pasted. And I'm happy to, if you feel strongly that that would be more clear to prohibit it, I'm happy to do that, to add that.
Well, if we have an industry best practice already established where it's blank, meaning it's not prohibited, I mean, it's not permitted,
Right,
therefore,
either way.
by default, it's prohibited,
Right.
then that in itself is satisfactory.
It's
I
clear?
think.
Yeah,
Right.
this is a document used by planners and developers. They're used to this system, keep it as
Right,
is.
right, because right here I put the legend where it says no number not permitted. So the other table just didn't have the,
It's just making.
Change
it's just-
that one, you got to change them all.
Yeah, and it's adding more stuff to the table that doesn't necessarily need to be there.
right, good point. Okay. Do you want to
Joan?
open it up? Is there anybody on the,
Rich,
oh, I'm sorry. For me?
maybe I missed something, but can you tell me why it's broken down into two amendments?
Because we have the Central Issaquah Standards, which is one land use code for the Central Issaquah.
But if we say prohibited everywhere in the city of Issaquah, that includes the central zone or central district.
Right, when you say it that way, it does, but we have two different locations that we have to put it. Same with marijuana. Remember when we did marijuana? We had to put it in both?
I don't remember. but-
Oh, I think of them as the same,
Okay.
as
It's the
similar.
same, it's the same zip code, right? I mean, we only have 2 zip codes in the city.
I'm not the one to ask about zip codes. That's not my wheelhouse.
No, I really don't
I know
think
we
it-
have 2 land use codes,
Exactly.
at least.
It sounds like it's splitting hairs, though, but, you know.
Yeah, I don't think it makes any difference, you know, if the city feels.
I just seem to be an awful lot of paper
'Cause if-
involved, and just saying prohibited in the city of Issaquah should be all you need to say.
Right, because if you put it in the IMC, which is the rest of the city, as you see up here, the zones up here don't have urban core. They don't have any of the zones in Central.
Okay.
If the city planners feel comfortable with putting it in two places, then we are fine with
That'll be
putting it in
done.
two places.
But maybe in a future time, we can talk about simplifying our code system.
Woohoo!
Okay,
That's a
so
goal.
with that, I'm going to open the public comment at 6:44. And if, is there anybody that signed up, or anybody would like to address the issue of injection sites?
My son is doing a report on her social studies class, so he might have a question for me.
You have to come up to the podium.
Sorry, he doesn't.
If he would like to come, and we would be,
It's really cool because you're.
please come on up and introduce yourself. So this is a time for citizens to come.
Sure. I
so-
wasn't, my wife's a tennis, so this is my gig tonight. James Dennis, I live up in Tallis. One thing I did notice, and my question is just based on what I saw a nurse at that station. And is there an assumption that she would provide medical aid? So if somebody does OD, how liable would the city be to, how open would they be to, some type of litigation if somebody OD'd on a site that you guys approve?
That's a great question that I don't know the answer to, but I
Okay.
know that's why one of the reasons the nurse is there.
Yeah, well, actually, having the nurse there, it seems like a liability to me, because then you're implying that medical aid is available if something should happen. It might only be better if she wasn't there at all, saying you're on your own, like, we're not responsible for anything that happens here. That's just my thought.
Right. Yeah, that's a great comment.
Good. Is there anybody else that would like to make a comment? Is there anybody else that would like to make a comment? Okay. With that, I will close the public hearing at 9:45.
6:45.
9:45?
I'm used to 9.
I know, I know.
Oh, my God.
Okay, so discussion,
How long have I been up there?
ideas.
So I have a couple thoughts. I guess first, I'm glad that you put the list of the other communities up there. One question I had was what are our neighbors doing? And it's, I guess, from my view, a little shocking and sad that everyone's just sort of carte blanche saying, no, we're never going to do this, not in our backyard. And I actually sort of interpreted the letter from the Human Services Commission a little differently. I mean, I thought the way I read what they wrote was that I appreciated the fact that they had somebody come and speak and they got a little more educated on it, and it seemed to me that they were saying we wish we had more time to learn more and maybe didn't want to close the door completely on it, but understood the position of council with all the stuff happening like you mentioned. So my only thought is that I guess I find it a little short-sighted. I understand that we want to do what our neighbors are doing, and I understand the risks and the issue, but I find it a little short-sighted. Everybody talks about wanting to solve the opioid crisis, but I mean, then everybody takes a step back and wants to know who's going to do it, So from my perspective, I mean, I'm planning on voting no tonight, not because I don't think there are risks that the city would be taking on, and I think I was in my research a little underwhelmed by the success, that in terms of people getting into treatment and things like that. I know that's not the point of these places, but I think that just closing the door right off the bat and not at least saying, hey, we would love to think creatively about this, and I think that would be good for Issaquah to do, to sort of lead in that capacity. And the other thing I would say, and then I'll stop talking, but is that by not including a prohibition in the code, that's not necessarily saying, yes, we want to be the pilot program.
Correct.
It may seem like that becomes the default because everybody else is saying, we're not going to be the pilot program. But I would assume that we would still, and maybe this is a question, but we would still reserve some ability to, I mean, it would go through a normal review process, I would think, at some level.
Right.
So we would still have the ability to modify that proposal or say no to that proposal if it came into town, if it wasn't exactly what we wanted it to be. So anyway, that's all I would say.
Carl?
I frankly don't understand the argument. It's something that's illegal, shouldn't be permitted anywhere. That's my feeling.
Doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
Pardon me?
It doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It's illegal, but it
just
doesn't mean
because it happens doesn't mean you make it legal and permit it.
Fair enough.
And the argument that we put it in or not put it in, and then later on we could address it again, you're just kicking a can down the road. We just tell people it's not permitted in Issaquah. Done deal.
Victoria?
Well, I also read the letter from the Human Services Commission a little bit differently than I thought was characterized. I think it does say in the middle of the letter, Issaquah is likely not an appropriate location for safe injection site, but it also has a lot of other important points. It talks about the opioid crisis and that we could have more space for education around this issue. I think that the Human Services Commission, by having an expert come and speak to them, I think that that is a very valuable thing to do, and I think it's good that we have the opportunity to also speak with the public about it, but I would have liked, I think, more information. I understand the argument that it is illegal, but I also understand that a lot of people overdose, and this does seem, under certain situations, to save lives or to prevent overdoses. So I think that there could be more room for education about it, and that was actually what I took from the Human Services letter, although I also respect their finding that they do not think it is appropriate. I think that their main message was that there is a need for more education around the issue.
What? You're next.
So looking back at the ordinance, it very specifically says at the beginning of the second page, whereas King County Council voted to limit establishment to CHELS, the safe injection sites, only to those cities which choose to establish such a location by a vote of its elected governing body. That suggests that if we take no action, it still isn't saying, okay, you're rubber stamping, it can come here. So I would, in response to what the Health and Services Committee said, I'd be open to having other discussions about that, actually getting the information on the number or estimated opioid users in Issaquah versus other surrounding areas, and get a sense of, is this the appropriate place? I don't think it is, but I don't think we necessarily have to say no to this in order to eliminate it as a possibility.
Rod?
If we approve it, then we are going to open our doors to a lot of activity, I believe, because now people are going to feel safe coming to Issaquah to take care of their heroin, their opiate addiction. You look at Everett and Kitsap County, they're in crisis. They're actually getting emergency funds to be able to take care of the opiate crisis. If we open our doors, they will come. We do not have the capacity to be able to handle it. It would take the city down a very dark and dangerous road. So, no, absolutely no way could this happen. We don't have the infrastructure to support it. It would create lots of problems. Theft
And I hear
crime.
you on that. I don't think I'm arguing that it's, and I'm responding because you're looking at me, not necessarily because.
I'm trying to look to everybody.
Okay.
She's over here, sorry.
Fine, you just stay right there.
I don't think I'm arguing that safe injection sites are a good option for Issaquah. Just what the ordinance says and what we are being asked to do to say no, prohibited, I don't think is necessary. And I think it does send a signal that not in my backyard, that list is going to go up on all of the other cities that are looking at this. I just don't think it's necessary.
So
I think
we-
it's actually very necessary. I'm also very empathetic to people who are addicted to opiate. I have a very close family member who is addicted to opiate. She was a very outstanding person, very smart, master's degree. She had a back injury. She was subscribed an opiate-based drug. The doctors pulled it away from her. She cannot get off it. So she's actually now shooting up heroin. But she has a safe place. It's her home. She has the resources to be able to take care of that. But what we're talking about is opening the doors to people who don't have those resources. You're bringing them into our city with a big welcome sign. Not good.
I agree with part of your argument, which is based on the Human Services findings, which is that we do not have, I think I agree with part of your argument, which is that we do not have the other resources and that potentially other cities would better have the resources and the network of public health and also, I think, mental health components for actually being a successful network around the site. Because in my reading about the components that are important for safe injection sites, it's very important that there are other facilities available to people when they go to these sites, that it's not just a nurse and a place where you walk in, but you also have other services for helping people stop using. And so I agree with that part of the argument. I found in my reading that there is not a lot of evidence that it can, under certain circumstances, pull people in, but it does not. I have a quote from a study about a lot of European cities that have safe injection sites, and they said there's no evidence that consumption rooms encourage increased drug use or initiate new users. So it may be that it's inappropriate for our city, but I think that there's a lot of education that could be around the potential for what it could do under the right circumstances.
So I look at Seattle and I see all the homeless tents, and I see all of the garbage that surrounds them, and the inability of the city to take care of that. So I look at this as something that would be similar, that people would not only would the people not really be taken care of, but the city wouldn't be taken care of, and we don't have the resources to provide help, and we don't have a place that's big enough away from enough places in order to support anything that would be not in the middle of the city. And I don't see that at this time we can proceed with this. And to answer your question, I think that we've done enough, had enough history, had enough discussion that we know that we don't want this in the city. I would suggest that maybe we go the other way and provide help to, and be maybe the first ones of the city to provide that kind of help for people who need it, but not as a safe injection site. So I'm perfectly content to vote no, that I now and in the future, I don't want to see a site here in the city. I just don't think it's an appropriate place for it. Seattle is way above our liberal way of thinking, and I don't think it's right for our community. So I think that maybe we can, if you want to do something, you do something to not just educate, but to help people in this situation. And a lot of them are stuck there, like Ron's relative, that it would be, something the city could do. So, go ahead.
I am going to vote no on this because the public feedback has been so strongly in that direction. I just kind of wanted to bring up the idea that the ordinance doesn't necessarily say that we need to negate it, and that I do think we should have further conversation.
Right. And
I
the
think
reason.
that this is not the end of it. I think that if there is some site somewhere that actually works and does a good job and everything is neat and clean around it, in the future, if that can happen, maybe, you can always change your mind, you can always change the code, but for right now, I think we're all in agreement that this is the best thing for our city right now.
So
The reason I invited Human Services to come tonight, to let them know that we were talking about it, is so that you'd be able to ask them questions about their experiences and the research they did and the presentation that they had, but none of them chose to come, which, I understand that too, but so I apologize that we weren't able to get anyone that really knew what was going on with the whole picture of it all.
But I just have one, I like you said, Joan, I'm sorry, about the, and maybe at some point in the future, if it could look and feel and be a certain way, I think that would be good. I think by prohibiting it, though, we lose the ability to ever have that conversation. We won't ever be able to influence that at all. We won't have the opportunity to set metrics around what that might look like. And frankly, I don't think it'll ever happen. Like, I don't think Issaquah is the right place. I don't think it's centrally located. I don't think it has the population or the services. And I think before, whoever were to open up one of those sites, before they did that, they would want to be able to check all those boxes for sure. So frankly, I don't think that there's a big risk that it would even happen. But if we just say no, we don't get to participate in that conversation. So it's still my opinion on that.
This topic scares the bejeebies out of me. This really does, because I see what happens to my family member, incapacitated 99% of the time. I mean, you get a conversation in for 5 minutes and the rest of the day, problem. And then there's scope creep. We say yes, supposedly that we become a pilot. Let's just say we go yes.
That's actually not what we're voting on. We're voting on prohibition.
Right, but it'll grow into something else. It's heroin today, it'll be some other drug tomorrow, and then we'll be in a position where we'll be required to probably accept it. So I say no, and I'm ready to say that I don't ever want this in our community. I need to protect our community. I feel like that's part of my obligation to the city of Issaquah. I need to protect it. So.
Or we could have a discussion in a different way, for a different facility, for a different way to handle this. And so we would be included in the discussion at that point in time.
Yeah.
So.
If the city has a prohibition, nobody will be coming to the city to put that in front of council or us. So that's what I mean by, I do think that we'll retain the ability to talk about treatment, and other ways to contribute. You're right about that, and I think we should, and I think we will, but that's all I'm saying. When I say we lose the ability to participate in that conversation, I mean to shape what a facility like that might look like, that's all. So,
Particular one.
Yeah.
Something in the future could be different.
Yeah.
Does anybody else, any other comments?
So I was a little bit, I was concerned about basically the argument that I was getting from some of this discussion and also from the letter, that since we don't have a network in place, basically since we don't have anything, then we shouldn't have safe injection sites. I do understand, but I would like to see some sort of, as I think Joan was saying, some sort of other services available in the community, because it is a problem, and this may not be the solution, but I think that we should do something.
Would it help if I had someone from Human Services or even from the department that's their chair, that is their staff, to talk to you all about? Because I know they've been working on things in their arena, but would it interest you all to find out what the city's trying to do locally for opioid and substance abuse and that kind
So
of
is
thing?
the city actually doing something, or are they just talking and listening to people coming in?
I would have to verify, because since it's not in my wheelhouse, but I know that was a council goal a while ago,
But
substance abuse.
that's actually out of the discussion tonight, so.
Right, but you're asking, it sounds like you're asking, are there other things that the city should be doing for locally, to help locally, the opioid crisis locally? If it's not a big safe injection site, are there other things to do? And I could get, if you wanted, I could try to get you more information on what we're doing.
At some point in time, that would be nice, just
Okay.
to, but it's not necessarily what we're doing, but what
Right.
we can do in the future.
Right.
I think maybe at some point in time, we can have a discussion, or this council could have, or Human Services or whatever, could
Right.
have a discussion of maybe something we can do a pilot project that way
Right.
of not
Yeah,
site, but doing something that would help the people, and besides education, I don't know what it would be.
yeah.
But maybe we could do something like
I would
that.
just say, I don't think we need to have it on an agenda for our meeting, but if you could just let it, maybe if
I'll find out and
if they're
email
going to have
you all.
something and we
Right.
could attend, or, that would be, just
Right.
keep us in the loop, that would be good.
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Are you ready to vote?
One point of clarification, the way we've been talking about it, so a vote yes is against it, and a vote no is to not have it.
Right.
Because people have been saying, I'm going to say no, but that would be the wrong thing to say.
How about for and against? So, cover that?
But it's for prohibiting them,
Yes,
so it is still a...
right?
Just to be clear. yeah.
If you vote yes for the amendments, it would prohibit them, yes.
That's correct.
And the council brought it back to us, and normally we can discuss it, and we can, if we were so against what they decided, we could make a recommendation, but that's not going to happen. I need a motion from somebody.
I would like to make a motion to approve the, what's the word I'm looking for?
Code amendments.
The code amendments concerning safe injection sites.
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor say yes. Aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
No.
3-2. Motion carries.
4 to 2.
4 to 2.
1,
Oh,
2,
I thought
3,
you said
4.
no.
I did. Yeah, it was 4 to 2, right? Didn't you say?
4 to 2.
I'm sorry.
I said aye.
But he said no, so
Yeah.
I thought you were, okay, so it's actually for it. So it's 4-1.
No,
Right?
2.
Well, technically
raise
4 to 1
hands?
if you're
on.
saying the,
Can you raise hands instead of ayes?
What,
okay.
there was a confusion for me, for somebody who said no and someone said aye, and
Said no.
I wasn't sure exactly which one of you said which.
I
So-
voted no.
Yeah.
So you said no, but I wasn't sure if it was no against it. No against the motion, so. So we are, right now, we are 5-4, no. Or against the motion, for the motion,
4 to 2
4 to 2.
We are 4 to 2.
for the motion.
4-2.
For the motion, and 2 that oppose
Against
the
the
motion.
motion.
Right,
We got it.
It still passes, 4-2.
correct, because you voted
4.
for it, okay.
Okay.
Way too
That's settled.
That was the hard part.
That was
That's
exhausting.
what I thought it was,
Oh, it's
but then when we went back, I wasn't sure if it was.
No, that's good.
Any. Okay, so next on the agenda is the,
Point of order, just clarify,
Yes.
No.
It's 4 to 1 because you're an alternate as well.
No, but we had this discussion, and I get to vote tonight.
docket. You read what is, well, let's have Trish. What?
Point of clarification. What we talked about, I guess, wasn't completely, the complete story is we have to say in the record that it was 4-1 of regular members, and because we don't need alternates because we still have a quorum of regular members, but that the alternate that attended voted against the measure. So that can still be in the minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
So the record will show it was overall 4-2.
Yeah.
But procedurally, it was 4-1
Yeah.
and 1.
Okay.
Thank you. Are we ready for the next one?
Yes.
Yes.
It's been quite a week. The comp plan, this is exciting. This is our January, every year we do this in January, where we open up the comprehensive plan. And we put in any amendments that we've been just hoping we can get to this year. We look at the list, you all look in the list in January, we send it to council, they review it, they may add some things, they typically do. They approve the list, and then we get at it and we start doing all the pieces on the list that we can possibly do in a year. The red parts of this slide show that even once I sent you the docket last week, the excitement was building. People started sending us things they wanted us to also do on the docket, and this was just internally. So I can imagine the ones that you're going to want to add. So the first one, the Transportation Improvement Program that we do every year, that's the 6-year capital plan. We also need to be sure that the transportation element is updated with the concurrency update that should be done this year, knock on wood. And also the Commute Trip Reduction Act, some of the details in that, it's a state program, some of that's been changed. So we want to make sure the numbers are accurate in the comp plan. So that's all under one, which is sort of the transportation element. The population ones, we do that every year. That's pretty exciting. Except we're adding a number to track jobs, because jobs got pretty exciting this year when we talked about vision, that we should start tracking jobs. So we're going to put some numbers in the comp plan so that we can officially start tracking jobs. They're a little trickier to track than population, but we're going to do it. The rezones so far, I love my job here. So far, we've only had one parcel that we know of that the city has purchased or has been donated or what have you. There may be more by the end, but this is that placeholder that any properties the city's received for public purposes, we do a community facilities rezone. Also, if there's any changes, and I think there are from the end of the development agreements, there's some zoning tweaks that they're doing that would come through our process as well to make sure that they fit into the comp plan land use designations. Also, transfer of development rights was an exciting topic when the council was going through the end of development agreements, and so the council has asked if we take a look at the transfer of development rights and figure that out in the comp plan, sort of the policy on where the receiving sites can be now that the urban villages, the two of them that or that Highlands used to receive them. How do we do that now that they're not the Highlands Development Agreement? So that'll be a really fun discussion.
Trish, can I clarify? It says sending sites there for TDRs, not receiving sites.
Right. Well, it would be both, where they
Okay.
where the units can come from and where they can go.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
Anything else on 1 through 4, even with the red ones? Even more on this page. As you remember, the architectural design manual that you looked at a few months ago in our exciting 2017, there was some discussion about hillsides, building on slopes, that we need to take another swing at to further clarify the policy on that. The policy on compact schools, do you remember this one? Yes, you do. We get to tackle this one this year, and I am looking forward to that. King County PAA, we had so much fun annexing that we missed some of the language in the policy talking about PAAs. So we have to, that's just a little bit of tweaking in the sub-area map, which that'll be a good one. The Central Issaquah Plan, when we finish the visions, which we will do very shortly, If perhaps some of the areas are out of the central plan, we'd have to shift the sub-area boundaries and do some shifting with that. And if there's any other bits and pieces that we'd have to do, this is sort of a placeholder to catch everything that we might change in the, like if we change the vision, not just the district visions, but the one-liners, all those pieces would be under this item. Okay, it's sort of a catch-all. Old Town, we're not quite done with Old Town yet, so it made it on the list again. We have high hopes for Old Town. The community sustainability indicators, which is Appendix A in the comp plan, which I know you already know that. We didn't get around to finally making it through those last year because the moratorium hit us. So those are on schedule to come back to you this year. And they've already been finished, they just didn't make it through the public hearing. So that should be hopefully not a big deal. The capital facilities element may need some updating only because the water system plan is coming from Public Works, and when they're done with all their policy decisions and issues and updates and numbers, then it will come to us to incorporate it into the utilities element and capital facilities element.
Does that include fluoridating the water and the mixing of the water between the wells?
That's a great question. We would imagine that those policy issues would be handled at the level of the water system plan, because if you were to ask me why we would do that and what is involved, I would not be able to answer that question to help you with the policy discussion. I would think that would have to be done by the experts in Public Works.
I have a question on an earlier one.
Yes.
When you have the policy on compact schools, is that, as we've been referring to urban schools, is that the same?
Yes.
It's not compact, it's urban. 'Cause
Okay.
we made a commitment to come back to you guys and talk policy on urban schools.
So we're, okay, so we're,
Compact schools code amendments are done.
Keith, you
Right,
can't be
okay.
heard, you're being flashed.
Bam, fine.
he's,
Less.
he's under the radar. It's the same discussion that we talked about in July.
So we're still using the word urban schools, we're not using really the word
Well, the
compact.
code says compact, but the policy, I guess we're sticking with the policy that was originally urban before the name got changed.
So.
Is there a
Wes.
difference between compact and urban?
Yes, there is. So,
Yes, no.
you know, so we started talking about urban schools, and that opened up a whole range of conversations that we really didn't intend to tackle with what we were really trying to do with the compact school code. So we changed, we rebranded, we called it compact schools, not urban schools. And what you guys said was, urban schools and schools in central Issaquah need to be more urban in nature. That may be very different than what we did for the compact school code amendments. And so what you guys asked for us to do is to bring back a policy conversation about what is an urban school, what's it look like, and how does it different than just a normal school. And so that's what we're doing, that's what this is. It's really to have that conversation. You guys said we need to have a policy conversation before we can really talk about urban schools. But that's, you know, and that's really kind of what I would consider the next generation of schools, past the ones that are in the current kind of pipe right now, the next bond when they're actually looking for school sites within central Issaquah, because that's where we're putting all our housing. So I think it could land that it's the very same thing as the compact schools. I think it's going to have some different kind of characteristics than what we talked about with compact schools.
So Keith, you're saying compact schools and urban schools are different, but the only thing on there is compact schools?
I misrepresented it when I wrote it there.
We'll fix that.
Okay, there we go.
I thought we weren't allowed to use the word anymore, so I stand corrected. Can we go to 12? 12, the new 12, I'm just trying to be accommodating. The new 12 is, I might be biased, but the Appendix B, which I know you know what that is a fabulous list of implementation strategies for the whole comp plan. Most all the elements have a list of implementation strategies. If you haven't looked at it lately, it is a fabulous list. Some of them are a little outdated, though, and it might be a good time, might not be, might be a good time to take a look at the list and see if there are any things that are so outdated that we would never, ever want to do them, or if there might be some things that now that you read the old list, you might have some new ideas that you would like to put on the list. And so we threw that on there just because we think it's such a fabulous list. The list, in fact, came 2 years ago. There was a lot of implementation tucked in the policies that we would be going on with the policy, and then there'd be an implementation tucked right in there. And it was very confusing because the comp plan is not an implementation. It's a policy document, but we didn't want to lose the implementation pieces, so we put them in Appendix B. So we put that on there as a reminder on how fabulous the idea is to have your implementation so close to your comp plan, it's actually in the appendix. So we'd like to kind of maybe think about if we'd like to look through the list this year. We wouldn't have to change it perhaps, or we might want to change it a lot if we have time. Questions on that one? Okay. And the next slide, the first, someone's going to say, you have to renumber the list now. Yes, we do, because now here's another number 11. These start the ones that we don't think we have time to do this year. These are being recommended, at least at this point in the process, that we wouldn't have time to do this year. And most of them have been on here for a little bit just because since we did the update in 2015, there's been a lot going on, so we haven't been able to have a lot of the policy question discussions that we would like to have.
So Trish, quick
Yes.
question for you. Number 11, would that include,
Yes, this is 11.2.
11, number 2? Wouldn't that also include level of service for public safety? The reason why I'm bringing that up, because
It has
are we,
police, fire, all of those.
right, isn't there conversation at city council level of wanting to add possibly law enforcement? And if so, wouldn't that necessarily,
Add them how? Add new officers?
right?
Well, we mentioned, you might remember the 2 years ago when the last time we did this, we had very old level of service data, and it bothered you all because you felt like you were making a decision on level of service with old data. And so we put a hold on this that until we can get new data, it seemed odd to go through the motions with new numbers when we really don't have new numbers. They can still get new officers because it did show that we were getting close to needing new officers. But we didn't feel it was a good use of time and resources to update this without any new information. We'd still be using the old budget and the old police statistics
Well, how would
on
we
their
get
level of
new?
service.
I-
We'd have to do a new rate study that updates, how many calls for service are they doing? How many officers do we have now? How many cars and motorcycles do we have now? How much room do they have to even do their job? And then you move it into all the statistics on how often do they go out. The detectives are different than the officers are different than the motorcycle folks. And so it's all updated. We update them. We're supposed to update them like every 3 or 4 years. But it's a little expensive, but it's a good investment because then usually your fees, your impact fees and mitigation fees can also go up to help pay for that extra service that you're providing.
So Trish, did the council fund that in the 18 budget?
I haven't seen the most recent version.
Okay. So we can follow up.
We can follow
with
up
you
on that?
Yeah, the reason why I bring that up is because I watched the last city council and I thought they had requested that or made a mention about law enforcement and wanting to add officers possibly, so.
Right, they can still do that.
Okay.
In fact, that's why we started doing this, was it gives them a 5 or 6 year out, what is it, when you look forward, to tell them that in 2 years you're going to need more officers, or in 3 years you're going to need more parkland, so that they can start thinking about budgeting for that ahead of time, rather than, oh, this year you need 4 officers, and so it's sort of that rolling budget plus service list.
So right now, if they wanted to add officers, it would be kind of a Well,
Well,
how
they-
would they do that? It would
Well,
be
they can totally do that because I'm sure the police chief has given them a lot of data. It wouldn't be a total rate study data, but he's probably got all the data on how his officers are out in the field, how often his detectives are out, so often their call list does this much, and their officers can only take this much daily, and so they need more. I'm sure they have a lot of statistics. It's just not the same thing as what we need to up the impact fee and mitigation fee rates. That then changes the level of service.
Okay.
So along that idea with what council has done related to the police officers and those 3 that didn't get approved for this year, we've also discussed school impact and mitigation fees this year, and that was certainly a controversy. So I would say if there's any way that we could get that included, I think that addresses 2 of the issues that has come up this year.
Right, and good point on school impact fees. This chapter talks about school impact fees as a pass-through, but there's going to be a code amendment coming soon, not in the first quarter, but coming soon to clarify the process that the school goes through to do their capital facilities plan, and then it comes to us, and we have our population increases, and to how we can work better together to understand each other's data, how we translate each other's data, and how to come up with a better process and a happier ending than we did this past year. But that's in the works, to do an actual process amendment or process tweak to help us with that.
So, all right, looking at I assume the 1 through 12 of the first set is what you're recommending to put forward.
Correct.
What was this number 11 version competing with? Why did it get on this list as opposed to maybe something else on the other list?
Because the funding for the rate study, when I drafted this, I had not yet looked in if December 18th or whenever they adopted the budget, if they had put money in for updating the rate studies for police and fire. Right now, we're doing transportation and parks, and the remaining 2 that were old are general government, police, and fire. And so we didn't want to update this with, as I said, with old information, so we were waiting for the rate studies to be able to put the new information into the level of service.
But they needed to add that to the FY18 budget.
Well, we asked for it. I'm not sure if I didn't check to see if it came, if we actually got funded.
Even if it did, it would happen this year, and the data would probably be available at the end of the year at the earliest or something, right?
Right,
Yep.
right. They usually take a while to gather all the information to update it.
Okay. So it couldn't happen anyways this
Right.
year.
We could start it this year if we did get the funding, but then actually the numbers would be available, like you said, because it takes a while to do all the data crunching for next year.
Okay.
Any questions about this page? This is not as exciting of a page, sadly. And then the very, very last page, these are also ones to work on, hopefully someday soon, but maybe not this year.
So I've got 3 questions I came up with.
Okay.
Based on conversations that have happened at city council level and PPC. Microcell sites, Lake Sammamish Development Plan, and Parks Plan.
Okay, when you say microsites, you mean small cell
Yes.
wireless? You have a public hearing on that. The 24th of February? Of January.
Right.
Next, 2 weeks. 2 weeks you have a public hearing on that. We are drafting code as we speak
Okay.
to regulate that, the new industry.
All right, and then what about the Lake Sammamish Development
speak.
Plan and the Parks Plan? And because I've heard those names being moved around, I don't know that much about.
You're asking fabulous questions. The Parks Plan, we met with them today, the Parks Director and Jen, and they're going to bring you the new strategic Parks Plan. It's going through the Park Board right now, and it will be coming to you later on this year.
Okay.
And so you'll be part of that and be holding meetings and discussing and having all sorts of good input. It's been a really cool process so far.
Okay.
And Lake
Sammamish.
Sammamish-
Not on here.
Pardon?
Shouldn't we add it on here?
The parks, well, when the parks, since the parks element is typically part of the, it shoots right in, but we could add it to one of the, that probably was on last year because we thought we were going to be done last year. But we can add it if it didn't make it on there.
So
We will add
along
it.
with the parks plan, kind of a land acquisition strategy and stuff to complete the green necklace, I'm not sure if that needs to be on here or if it would just update the comp plan once we've made decisions.
That might be part of the parks plan. I'm not sure if that, but that's certainly a good thing to get in writing somewhere. Strategy for green, putting lantern, green network. Okay. And Ron, you still had a question about Lake Sammamish?
Yeah, I heard
And
discussion
what would the
about a Lake
policy
Sammamish.
question be on
Oh.
that?
It was a Lake Sammamish development plan,
Development agreement? Uh-huh.
development agreement. Would that be appropriate for this list, or that's still aspirational?
Right. Is
Absolutely not aspirational.
that something that would be a policy?
No, it's not policy. It's actually the opposite of policy. So it would be similar to like the Costco development agreement. It's what can you do in the park. It's doing an EIS that would maybe create an envelope of development and activity that could go in there without additional environmental review. And so that is, it's very much project-oriented, less policy-oriented.
Okay.
At least that's my expectation right now. We're going to have some public meetings probably over the next couple months and talk about scoping the EIS, and that may change, but I'm thinking it's much more programmatic, like turning the existing grass soccer fields into maybe all-weather fields to increase their activity and potentially create maybe a destination for like regional soccer tournaments.
So
Right.
if it's not on this list and we get to the point where it may need to be on the list, do we just add it at that time, or, because this is the docket for 2018 for planning, so would it be?
This is the docket of amendments to the comprehensive plan. So it's not necessarily all of the things that we address in planning, but rather what would go into our comprehensive plan for the city.
Right. So let's take small cell. That might be an easier conversation to have because I know what that looks like. And I'm not writing it right now. I might be writing it later. So that'll be a code amendment. So we have a section in the IMC Chapter 18 right now, 1807-505, which is wireless communication facilities. Small cell and the amount of equipment that is probably coming our way is causing the need to relook at our potential design guidelines for putting those in. And so that will be a code amendment. That will come to you guys because it is a code amendment to Chapter 18, but that's not policy. It's not part of the comp plan. It's more actual like nuts and bolts.
Keith, going back to the development for Lake Sammamish.
Yeah.
What happened to the plan that was developed several years ago?
So the master plan from 2007 still exists.
like that.
This is not intended to replace that. I'm talking for state parks right now. This is intended kind of as an evolution, maybe. So there's, the park is clearly a significant amount of the park is natural, open space, focused around Issaquah Creek, heron rookeries, fishing is a huge thing. So all of that is still important. This is kind of moving along the lines of the city and state parks talking about how do we increase the amount of activity that also happens in the state park that's not kind of nature oriented. So the AVP volleyball tournament started showing up. I think we're in year 4 now. There's been the state parks also executed a partnering agreement with REI, and there was talk about potentially doing like an educational center. So this is not in lieu of what they did in 2007. This is, and what else can they do from what's going on right now. So they've done a bunch of investments. You know, they built a new bathhouse. They did a complete restoration of Sunset Beach. There's a new huge tot lot thing there. They've got permits to build a dock. And then, you know, they're talking about lifeguarding, and and what else can we do? And one of the biggest things that they would like to do is to move the entrance to the state park. So right now, for all of us, we know where the entrance to the state park is, but it's candidly in a weird space. It's kind of like this weird mid-block entrance. And, you know, if you were coming from Spokane or somewhere else in the state to visit it, they would like it closer to the intersection, kind of where the Arco and IHOP and Tully's and all that is. And so part of the EIS and the development agreement might be looking at, can you move it without messing up traffic? So there's a big traffic piece associated with this. So that's what we're going to do. It's probably going to take a year. It's going to start with some conversations with the community. That's going to be jointly done with city staff and state park staff. And that'll be in the next few months. I don't know exact details because my partners have been on vacation.
This has come a long way from the threat of building office buildings on it.
Nobody's
Remember that?
talking, to my knowledge, nobody's talking office buildings.
No,
Yeah.
whatever, 2004, 5, whatever, the state was thinking about getting revenue by building office buildings on Lavish Lake Park. Any other questions?
I have a few other suggestions, options there. So I looked through other comp plan dockets for nearby cities. I noticed that Bellevue is adopting Vision Zero for zero traffic deaths. I'm not sure if that's something that we would want to include. Redmond has a regulation of multifamily housing zoning, like rezoning, in their current business park and commercial areas. So saying we don't want to lose commercial parks and the jobs that they provide. And I know that's something that's come up for us. So I don't know if that would fit into any of the other areas, but the idea that we wouldn't want, such as
Sort of the no net loss, that if housing
Yeah.
comes in, there's no net loss of jobs?
Well,
that sort of
more
idea?
like don't take a current business park and put in housing there instead.
Because you have to somehow keep the jobs or keep the,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah. And then the last one, the ST3 station. Is there something that we should be doing there at this point, or is that kicked down?
I'm looking at our transportation guru. I see Kristen just popped that one right over to you.
So, so that's super interesting question. I don't know there's a clear answer, so I'll kind of answer it the best I can. So we're going to have some conversations. We already have had some conversations as part of CIP district visions, and especially as it relates to Central Valley or Issaquah Valley or whatever that ends up being called at the end of the day. I think the next place it's going to show up, but it's too early to tell, is so the council is going to work on a strategic plan this year. And what would be possibly a very interesting topic for them to include in the strategic plan is putting some edges to that ST3 station. Like, where is it? How are we going to treat it? For those of us that were at the chamber lunch today, where the mayor spoke, there was a question about, I just kind of want to see what this looks like. And Joan said, I told you so. And so that piece of this, there's a huge desire, I think, for that jewel to land, and so that we can start planning around it. And so it will be interesting for me to see, and because they haven't started having those conversations about what the strategic plan is going to include, I don't know. It could include that. It seems like that's a giant piece for us to start a community conversation about. And what a better way to do it than put on a strategic plan where you say, okay, in the next 2 years, we're going to unravel this thing and see what it really looks like. So I think for me, that's a better spot than here, because here I'm not sure where that goes. But there, I would know where it would go.
Following along my little agenda, there's a public hearing on approval of the docket. And so I'm going to open up the public hearing at 7:40, and ask if anybody wants to talk about the docket. Do we have a member of the community that would be interested in providing us information?
Okay, so I'm going to start with how we get to the docket. And I would actually like to be able to understand a little better.
Connie, can you tell us who you are?
Connie Marsh, are we doing that at this meeting? I get confused. Connie Marsh, I live on Squawk. How the information gets into the docket. Now, in the past, there has been a way to propose your ideas to get on the docket, and that's a public interface where if anybody wants to have a policy, then you would shove your idea in, and then it would go through some administrative review and potentially be able to get up on the docket. And we used to actually do that with the land use code too. And that has sort of disappeared in the intervening years. And so now when I look at the docket, I have a hard time understanding exactly how everything has gotten fed into the docket. And so I go to all the meetings and I hear all the things that are happening, and I sort of go, well, are these really all the policy decisions that are happening so we can understand what we're going to be doing this year? And so I thought we were doing the shoreline master plan this year. And and the shoreline master plan is actually in your back. Chapter 11 is one of those things for update. Shoreline master plan policies could be make changes in this. And then Keith over here started talking about the council doing a strategic plan. Well, if the council is doing a strategic plan, then it seems likely that the council is going to start looking at policy changes in their strategic plan, because I've never seen the council just not go up into policy when they're trying to create something. And I didn't even think to weave it in. The maintenance facilities for ST3 got put into the comprehensive plan whenever it got put in, and I know council has been chafing that somehow we have indicated that we're going to house the maintenance facilities for ST3 on the valley floor. And so speaking here, I then don't understand if I feel like something is supposed to be on the docket, does that just now, because somebody came up with an idea, we say, oh, look, here's another idea, let's put it on the docket. So if you approve the docket after I have spoken, I guess you all would have to say, yes, this needs to be on the docket, and then Trish would add it to the docket. So it seems awkward. The process seems awkward to me to get it done thoroughly. The treasures, we've been wanting to redo the treasures for many years. because our town is way bigger, and we only have treasures from our valley floor. And we have the Issaquah Highlands, we have Talus, now we have Lake Sammamish State Park. And so it seems time, as we're going to be developing shortly, to start creating some protections of the things that we refuse to lose. And these are sacred things in our town that shall not be harmed. And I would like to see that put on the docket for this year, too, as a public conversation. And one last one. The community engagement program, we have no real policies for what we want to see. So it's hard to create a package for community engagement if we have no sort of overarching guidance in goals and policies for what we see for community engagement. So I would also like to see that be done this year, and so we'll see what happens next.
And just a clarification,
Yeah.
if the PPC doesn't recommend the items that you listed, and not that they wouldn't, they may, you can also go to Land and Shore, and because there's still opportunities. This was just sort of in January is the first time that it comes to the public for their ideas. So it's not the last time that you could share it.
Connie, before you go, of all of the ideas that you just went through, which one would you say is the most important? It should be on this.
I say the treasures, because if we don't address them, they could disappear.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to talk about the list of? Seeing no other, anybody else, I will close the public hearing at 7:45. And open it up to discussion. Did you?
I actually agree with what Connie Marsh had mentioned about technically all three. If we don't talk about community engagement this year, we're not going to lose it. If ST3 maintenance yard, we're going to have to address it at some point, so that's kind of an asterisk. The treasures, I think it might be a good time to talk about something like that. Aspirational, put it on the list and see what Land and Shore and City Council think.
Keith, of the three things that, the three things that were brought up, are they things that you feel should be on here? Are they part of something else? Are they being taken care of some other way? Is there another process than being on this docket?
And so for those of us who were talking in the back of the class, those three things were
The treasures,
treasures,
community engagement program,
community engagement program.
and the Shoreline Master Program?
So Shoreline Master.
Are those the
And
three?
ST3 maintenance.
Oh,
Well,
ST3 maintenance. I put
okay.
that up with,
So,
I put that with Lindsay's.
So, okay, so there's four. Shoreline Master Plan, let's start with that. So we are updating our Shoreline Master Plan. There is grants available from Department of Ecology. I think we've applied for a grant. Doug Yormick is the planner that's going to be in charge of that work. I don't know that that will be done in time for any kind of policy outcomes to be included in the docket for this year. So it may actually be, so the work that's being done to update the Shoreline Master Plan in 2018 would then be reflected on a 2019 docket.
That's true, but you have things on there
Put that
that
on
are
there. Right.
2019.
I know nothing about
Right,
that.
I can put those on, we can put
Okay.
those on for later years.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's just basically a placeholder to make sure that somebody's
Right.
looking at them and,
Okay.
okay.
So second item, let's go to the rail yard maintenance facility. That's it's a significant facility, but it is a it's a nuance to something else that we need to talk about first, right? I mean, once you know where the station is, then the conversation about where the maintenance facility goes hand in hand. But you can't start talking about the maintenance facility. I mean, for example, if the station stays within the I-90 right-of-way, it could be that the maintenance facility's in the right-of-way as well. And if that's the case, I'm not sure any of us super care. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. But that's a conversation that I don't think we are to yet. And so I think the first piece goes back to what I said earlier. Let's see where the community wants to engage on the ST3 station. And I have not heard from my new mayor on where she might want to start talking about that. But like I said, the strategic planning process will start unfolding, I think, this spring. And then we'll start to get a sense for what kind of topics are going to be included in that conversation and whether the station would be or not. But the maintenance facility is proximate to the station. So those are, I think, going to need to be talked about as kind of a dumbbell connected. The treasures. I was talking treasures before Connie was talking treasures as being on that list. Now, what I would say, though, is I totally agree that treasures need to be updated. There needs to be a newer conversation about the treasures than the one that was done
93.
in 93. Now, what I would tell you guys is to add something of that caliber to the docket for this year, given the fact that we're knee-deep in visions. I'm looking at the staff that would have to lead that exercise, and I can tell you we don't have bandwidth. So my suggestion is to not lose that and put that up there for 19, and we can always slide it down if 19 looks scarier than 18, but I can tell you right now, based on state park and visions and finishing up moratorium things and the housing strategies that we're kind of unpacking this year and small cell, I mean, I've got a list that's this long of non-permit related projects that Development Services is doing. Adding a meaty item like updating the treasures, it breaks my brain. I don't know how we would do that this year.
I don't even think Connie thinks that it should be done this year. It's just the fact that it would be on the docket and it would have a placeholder. And you can, as you've done in many years before, you've had it scheduled and then you've scheduled it for the following year. So it's an interesting concept. I'm just looking at the visions and where we're putting things and how we're developing stuff. And it would be nice to have something that says these are the treasures that we don't want to lose.
Right.
Kind of thing. And so it kind of goes together. So I would like to see that up there as a placeholder. I can't imagine you're going to do it this year. You probably might not even do it next year, but at least it's on the docket, and once it's on there, it's going to be done at some point in time. Okay?
And Keith, question.
Yeah.
Can you explain the treasures?
Can I explain the treasures? No,
can
because
explain
in
the
'93, I was still in Phoenix. I'll let Trish explain the treasures.
When GMA came out of the state in 1990, the first thing that one of the first things Issaquah wanted to do is figure out what we wanted to keep, so that in our 20-year growth management plan, with everybody coming to live here and work here, what did we want to keep forever that would keep our town just the way we wanted it? So we had a big outreach. It was a great process where we created a list of treasures that are in the comprehensive plan. And the list is much longer than what's in the comprehensive plan, but the council only adopted the first 35, I think, because 37 was Harvey Manning, and they didn't quite know how to preserve Harvey Manning, even though he is a city treasurer. They just felt a little odd having a person listed, so they cut their list off at 35. But it's a great list. Some of the things we've lost already because they weren't in the city of Issaquah, they were in the county, but we counted them as our city treasurers. But I'd invite you to look at the list. It's a great list of things, and it would be really fun to update them because there's, as Connie said, there's a lot of things we have now that we didn't have back in '93 that we would like to keep.
It needs updating, but there's a 100-year-old tree
And there's mist.
The mist in the mountains that are our ancestors. I mean, it's a great list.
So I guess the question goes, are there urgent treasures that we need to identify quickly before we start moving forward with the moratorium or releasing of the moratorium so that those are protected?
Well,
I'm not-
see, and it's not
so-
protected. It's a resolution recognizing the treasures. That's not actually code language that says that you can't cut the big tree or that the mist in the mountains is protected in any way. It's just an awareness that these are the things that are important to us. and
But
to
like
do
Gilman
things to
Village
try-
is
yeah.
a treasure, right?
Gilman Village is a
And so we've
treasure.
talked about
Bones
that,
is a treasure.
even as part of the visions. The edible landscape on Gilman, isn't it? You're looking at me like, well, I don't know.
I'm not sure that is, but Bones is.
Okay.
It is
So,
edible
so
Dang.
this is a bigger conversation. Trying to
I'll
say,
send you the
let's
treasures.
tackle a piece of it now. Again, I have no bandwidth. There's no way to add anything else to my plate. You can make a recommendation. You guys have the ability to make that recommendation. I'm going to be trying to lobby against it because I just don't think we can do a good job with it this year because we have so much else on our plate. But I have no problem putting it up here for a 19 or a 20 work item.
My real question comes down to, I guess, the objective is, do we have any high risks?
Sure. Gilman
And
Village
what-
could be demolished tomorrow.
Village.
But this treasures plan doesn't do anything to protect them. It just acknowledges that these are treasures.
Yeah, it's just a
It
resolution.
identifies there's certain things in our community that make us us. And I think we need to revisit that because it's a great conversation. And then if nowadays we look a lot more towards if we want to actually have things happen, how do we then take actions to be successful? And I think that is a conversation that we need to have. Of that list of treasures, are there certain things we can influence? I don't know that we can influence the mist in the mountains. Maybe we can. Get a climatologist to help us understand that better. But there might be some actions we can take as a community to make sure that at least a portion of the treasures are preserved. I don't know, but that's a conversation we could have.
It's a great list. It was a great process. It really was.
Yes, it was, and it's a great list, but there are some things on it that are questionable and some things that we need.
I had one more. I did remember all four. The community outreach program. So what I would tell you is I don't know enough about that to know whether that's comp plan policies. So I don't know if that discussion is going to generate then policies to add to our comp plan or not. It could. I know that the council increased the funding for the neighborhood outreach coordinator from 3/4 to full-time. And so there is kind of an increased effort to improve our community outreach. Part of that within development services is to look at our construction noticing, the old white signs that used to go up that said, hey, all the trees are going to get bulldozed on this property. But as you drove past it at 40 miles an hour, you didn't know if it was going to be a single house or a 5-story, apartment building. And so part of what we've been talking about is how do we change that to make it more transparent to the community, what's actually going in there. And we've done some tests with some different projects that are under construction right now. And so that will be one part. It won't be I can't see policies coming out of that activity, but this other thing, maybe not. I don't know enough to know.
Okay.
Sorry.
So are you recommending that we add it on to this list for visibility?
I'm not, but you guys could.
Right, I don't know what policies would be involved in that either.
I don't either.
It will be a code amendment that you see, I think, because some of the public outreach notification would change if we're going in the direction that we think we're going. But it's not a policy, though. It's just trying to do a better job at letting folks know when construction and development is coming.
I think that's an ongoing thing for you guys to, after you hear from the neighbors that haven't been warned about a 4-story building, now you're understanding you got to do a little bit more
Right.
to, I don't think that should be on there. I think that's something you should be doing all the time, but I could be wrong.
Right. It's more code.
I think it's a general discussion about how the community engagement person should be, how her time should be used to increase public engagement in the process. So that would be the larger conversation I would want to have. I don't think that probably fits in the comprehensive plan.
No. Agreement? No agreement. I don't know about you. Yes or yay or no, so.
No, I just have a question, a different question. Is that okay? Back to the table. Original number 12 it's not proposed to be on the docket, and I'm fine with that, but I just have a question about it. Create transportation element implementation strategy. That sounds like something the community would really resonate with at some point in time, so I don't really know what that is, but I'm glad it's on the list. I get that we don't have time for it this year, but maybe next year.
Right.
Anything around transportation, I think, besides the improvement program, I think would be forward-thinking. That's all.
Right.
We cool?
Yeah.
So actually, I'd like to ask a question of the commissioners. Of the 4 items that were mentioned, do we want to discuss them any further, or do we want to add them on as you get visibility to them?
Well, I thought that the idea of discussing the treasures in some form would be nice, because it sounds like there's a lot of, there will probably be a longer discussion than just one meeting. And so I think it would be nice to start that discussion in 2018. I also don't know, based on the information we heard about what the list of treasures is, though, I also don't think it's a comprehensive plans amendment. But I think it would be nice to start the discussion.
Right, and it's just located in the comprehensive plan. It was
Yeah.
done as the beginning of our GMA, so we've always left it in there as, I think it's in volume 2, just so we wouldn't lose it. But I'll send it to you tomorrow morning, so you can, again, read the treasures.
Trying to find out.
Okay, so with that, do we want to add any more? We're comfortable with where it is.
The ones that Lindsay added, are we adding those?
So
'Cause I
my
didn't
main
hear-
ideas were the ST3 station, the regulation so that we're not rezoning business park or commercial into multifamily,
And the Vision Zero?
Vision Zero,
I'm
which,
going to ask Kristen, the mobility plan, the master mobility plan, would that have something like the Vision Zero in it? It would cover it?
yeah.
Okay.
The only reason I brought it up was because it was on Bellevue's docket for adding to theirs, so I wasn't sure whether it was something that's standard we should be also adopting.
Okay, and do we know the timeline for the mobility master plan?
No, waiting to get a senior transportation planner.
Okay.
And a transportation advisory board in place. And that's
that's a
when
good
that'll
point.
start being addressed. And really, the Vision Zero, the Transportation Zero, like the water system plan, that's something that needs to be addressed through the transportation group first and then come to us.
Okay,
Yeah, that'll be good for the transportation board.
okay.
So we're not adding anything?
So that one wouldn't get added then? Is that right?
No, I don't think it needs to be added.
No, okay.
You don't want to add any of the,
But the others?
So we have the shoreline, the community engagement, ST3 maintenance yard, and the treasures, and then your Vision Zero. So of those 5, we're not recommending that we add any of these onto the docket, at least for visibility.
I think for the most part, we've decided that those belong in other areas than the comprehensive plan. While they're important, things like the ST3 station location would happen with a strategic plan or other things.
Trish?
With the policy on, yes, I agree with what you said. And I was moving on to the next one, the policy on no net loss of jobs / business parks. That would be something that would either go in economic vitality or the land use element. We're still talking about that one, keeping that one?
But you have, one of those things up there is you're going to work on the number of jobs.
Right, we're going to have a tracking of jobs, like we have a tracking of housing coming in.
And so I think that kind of works together.
Right, there's not an actual
I
policy,
think it will be
though.
handled by other conversations that are happening. Again, it was in Redmond's docket,
Right.
so I just wanted to bring
And that was a
it up.
question, though, when Atlas came in and it wasn't a business park, but the little mall was taken out, was like, wow, how many jobs did we lose? And so, I mean, it begs the question, do we want to have something in there that at least says that we're aware that if it
Yeah.
comes in?
And I guess that as an idea, it could be presented in our comprehensive plan as we value jobs and don't want to work on those replacements. So I don't know whether that's a policy decision that then needs to find a home in the comprehensive plan. But it certainly seems like something that, as a community, we're having more discussion around.
Right.
So why don't we just take those 5 things and make a list and keep them in front of us for either next year or to make sure that they're done or looked at? Just keep a record of them, basically.
Okay, because I'm happy to because I agree that ST3 should be in the strategic plan for the bigger question. The Shoreline Master Program, I'm happy to put that in for 2019, because you'll be seeing probably parts of it as it comes through if there's
Yeah,
changes.
and that applies to the comprehensive plan, so I think
Right.
that's the appropriate place.
Right, and then the treasures, either in starting this year at the end of the year and then continuing on into 2019, I'm happy to put those on as a separate line in the docket.
Yeah.
But I don't have 5. Which one am I missing?
So the 5 was, so shoreline, community engagement, ST3 maintenance, treasury, and then the Vision Zero.
3.
So Vision Zero is going to go somewhere else. Community engagement is going to go somewhere else. What were-
So shoreline, ST3 maintenance, and treasures.
Is ST3 maintenance in the comprehensive plan?
It's in the central plan, but I think
Yeah.
it should get figured out in the strategic
Well,
plan.
it should, but these are comprehensive plan amendments, so.
Right, so I was saying it
that
would
goes
go somewhere
elsewhere.
else, right.
Yep. So we're down to shoreline and what?
Treasures.
Treasures,
Shoreline,
which are
and the-
both comprehensive plan.
Right, and the
Yeah.
policy of no net loss, or at least to consider something, or no?
Well, actually, yeah, I would say
Okay.
it probably belongs in the comprehensive plan, whether or not it
Right.
would be handled this year or not.
So I have no net loss, the Shoreline Master Program, and the treasures.
You don't have to put all these in there. You understand that. I mean, you don't have to put them all in here.
Well, and they don't have to be done this year.
And as long as
Yeah.
you
Right.
and Keith understand that they don't have to be done there.
And Keith, the capital facilities plan, we're actually moving forward with getting the data to support that initiative for 2019.
Oh, we have to check to see if it was funded. The funding of it?
I think I lost that brain cell over the holidays. So it was in the department's budget to fund the update of the rate study. I don't remember if it got adopted. So I need to, and we were trying to look on a phone, but Trish will follow up with you tomorrow and give you an idea of whether or not the rate study got funded. If it did, then we will have that done by the end of the year, and there will be updated impact fees for police, fire, general government. If it didn't get funded, I need to remember why it didn't get funded, because I remember we asked for it. So I need to figure out the pathway of where it fell off the funding proposal. But your guys' memo that you sent saying the city needs to update its impact fees, that was why it was put on the request for this year. And I'm at least 75% sure it got funded, but I don't know for sure. So we will do a little homework and let you guys know that. And if so, then the impact fees need to be
Change
updated.
that, right.
What we were upset about the last time was that the last rate study was done 6 or 7 years ago.
With the treasures.
And the, right. And it came down to we needed no new policemen, no new firemen, and we had an excess of a fire truck. And so things have changed drastically since then, so. Okay.
So if that level of service data did get funded, is that still, and that's on the other page, is that still listed as 2019, or would that potentially move it up into 2018?
It would depend on how fast the consultant can get that data together.
Okay. Because I would say of the kind of extras, that would be a pretty important one
Right.
to me, considering the conversation on impact fees and
So-
the fact that
Right.
we are so behind on.
So
Right.
I'm sure we have small cells helping Kristen use her phone to stream data. So it is in the adopted budget. So we will be, and so you need to put that on your list of things to do. Because I'm
Yay.
sure you had more capacity.
excited, yeah.
So we will get the consultant started on that sometime soon.
In the first quarter.
Yes. Yeah, our first quarter list, which is a page and a half long, apparently it needs at least one more thing.
Yeah,
So
yes, it
so we will do that. And that's good. I thought that it got funded, but I just couldn't remember for sure. So thank you, Kristen.
Wow, that's,
So by leaving this as number 11,
well, I have to renumber them. It will be 13 now.
So are those 11 and 12, okay, first of all, is this in order of importance?
No.
Okay.
okay. It's just on the docket then. So that means you have the authority or the ability to actually move forward, getting the funding, supposing the consultant is able to finish their work. Not for yes.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Excellent.
And when you think of the process, we hope to come to you in September for a public hearing, which would mean all their work would have to be done before that, so we would have the numbers by then. So I'm not sure we would have them all, but we might have one. We might have police done, or whichever they do first. We'll just have to see how fast they can go.
I
Excellent.
need a motion to approve what we've just changed on the docket.
Madam Chairman, I move that we approve the comprehensive plan amendment docket for 2018 with the changes we've discussed, including the new highlighted in red portion on this slide for numbers 11 and 12. And that's the new 11, and the old 11 being added
Becomes 13.
into 2018.
Well said.
Yep. Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries.
Done.
So anything else for the good of the order besides when our next meeting is?
Not that I know of, but I've sent an email out because, yes, we're looking for yet another night for a quorum for the vision. And I've heard 2 responses of yeses, so we're well on our way. And it would be Wednesday, February 28th. So make sure you let me know if you're able to do yet another exciting vision night on a Wednesday. I know it's exciting.
Yeah, I was planning a world tour.
Well, it was either Valentine's Day or the 28th, and as much as we love each other, I went with the 28th. So I'm
This is-
hoping that's okay.
Have I already responded to your email? Because if
You
not,
did.
yes.
You did.
I'm actually out of town.
So thank you. You and Lindsay have said yes.
So, yes,
Okay. Well, I need verification in writing.
I will.
so. But thank you. But the other dates then would be you have next week off, like what will you do with your spare time? But you have homework to do. I sent you homework this morning. And then next week you can either send me the answers to your homework and we can make beautiful slides so that when you share your thoughts with the rest of the commissioners, they'll be on slides. Or you can just bring them yourself and we can go from there. And then the next week after that, you have 2 meetings in a row. So January is all very exciting. So use your time off next week wisely.
Okay.
And thank you very much for all your work. It's pretty exciting.
With that, I will call the meeting closed at 8:11. Thank you.
Gallery going on back there.
And on